So I want to welcome to the panelists today, and welcome as well. We have a great panel today to start. So we're going to have joining us via video the Minister of Communications of Malaysia. We have Elise Quevedo, that is the only lady in the panel, but we hope to have more next days. So thank you so much for being here, Elise. Muhammad Umar joining us as well from Pakistan, and Dr. Jatinder Singh joining us from New Delhi in India. So I think there's a problem with this video. We hope to get him in a second. So in the meantime, I'll read a bit of the bios of everyone before we start. So just giving a bit of context. So I will start with the ladies first, like they say. So Elise is one of the global top thought leaders in both different areas of business. She is recognized as one of the most influential people in social media, and as well a global thought leader that has been speaking, advising, and creating strategies for both big corporations and the governments, and as well working in and creating a lot of education in the areas of digital transformation. She was being voted top 100 entrepreneurs to follow on Twitter, and is ranked among the top 2% most viewed profiles on LinkedIn, and as well as a huge amount of awards, like the top 25 Global Shihiro Award winner in 2020. She writes for different publications, has been collaborating in organization in Fortune 500 companies, and as well collaborating with the likes of Amazon, Huawei, eBay, PayPal. And their interests include AI, digital transformation, disruptive technologies, enterprise and digital innovation, and the impact of digital learning in the younger generation in particular. And as well, she's been an advocate of the areas of tech for good, an influencer, and very focused on startups and digital ecosystem. Then I'm going to have, of course, joining us from Malaysia, although via video that I'll put in a while, Saifuddin, that is the Minister Abdullah, Minister of Communications of Malaysia. He is leading the communications and the telecoms, and as well part of the technology ecosystem from Malaysia. He's been very focused on digital transformation, and he has a huge political and governmental career that has been joining with different personalities, and as well working with the new government of Malaysia that has been highlighting different things. Then joining us from India, we have Mr. Sanjay Agarwal, that is the Chairman and CEO of Paramount Communications, and as well the President of PhD Chamber of Commerce. He's been a businessman for most of his life, and he's been creating the last 60 years through the group of his family, one of the biggest group focused on cables and wires, solutions and telecoms in India, but as well as leading the PhD Chamber of Commerce. That is a Chamber of Commerce with 115 years old. That is one of the leading chambers of commerce of India with 130,000 members. And last but not least, we have Umar Muhammad, that is joining us as well, an expert in technology that has been working with the likes of Vodafone, Nokia, and as well right now is actually creating solutions related with AI and different areas in terms of applications for very sensitive data and biometrics for governments, telecoms, and others related solutions. And he's joining us from Pakistan. So I welcome all of you. I see that we are all here. So I'll start because, of course, the Minister of Communications of Malaysia will be via video. So I'll put the video for him, and then I'll start with the questions and start introducing all of you in terms of starting the proper panel. So just give me a second, and I'll put the video, sorry.
Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, businesses were hesitant to invest in digital technologies as they felt that their long-term productivity gains would compensate for the high initial cost in acquiring advanced technologies. SMEs, especially in East Malaysia, had to face digital adoption challenges, mainly due to the inadequate infrastructure, resulting in issues relating to connectivity and quality of internet access. To alleviate the effects of the global pandemic and to encourage more digitally skilled Malaysians and digitally powered businesses, the government has implemented an economic growth plan consisting of both fiscal and policy measures called the National Economic Recovery Plan, or in short, PENJANA. The National Digital Infrastructure Plan, or in short, JENDELA, and the recent National 4IR and Digital Council to steer the socio-economic development of the country through the use of advanced technologies. Malaysia's culture of openness and the critical discussion around the implications of digital transformation require us to support technology that enables people and creates genuine value to them. We're also asking ourselves, what can we do to live in the kind of world that the technology we are building can serve and enable us? Our policies and standards include strategies that, number one, adhere to a set of United Nations Sustainable Goals, the SDG 2030, EU AI Alliance, and universal principles that guide our technological and business strategy decisions. Number two, invest in building technology that promotes responsible data usage and management. Number three, employ and empower a team of privacy and civil liberties researchers, technologies, and engineers. Number four, work with leading global think tanks and universities. And number five, engage with independent experts in privacy law, policy, and ethics. In fact, in a way, the COVID-19 pandemic has emerged as a game changer for digital transformation. The Ministry of Communications and Multimedia Malaysia, through its agency, i.e. the Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, or MDEC, is leading the country's digital economy forward by focusing on creating inclusive and high-quality growth through the nationwide digitalization initiatives that are in line with the government's shared prosperity vision 2030 and our goal to firmly establish Malaysia as the heart of digital ASEAN. In order to accelerate Malaysia's digital economy nationwide and in the region, the ministry, together with MDEC, is stimulating digital adoption within SMEs in a wide array of business sectors. This initiative includes, among others, Digital Accelerator Virtual Platform. The platform helps SMEs gain access to available programs, incentives, and technology solutions that best match their specific digitalization needs. And SME Digital Acceleration Program, which is a business transformation accelerator program that digitally empowers businesses, namely by providing a structured approach to adopt digital with outcome-based results. And then there is the Smart Automation Grant, which is a matching grant for services companies that help automate their business processes and move towards digitalization. The purpose of this grant is to help them kickstart the development and implementation of projects that drive the adoption of technologies to automate business operations. And we have the SME Digital Quick Wins, which is a platform that focuses on facilitating the process of connecting technology solution providers with SMEs to properly tackle and overcome the challenges that these businesses face with digital by implementation free or discounted digital solutions. And then there is this e-usahawan, i.e. a platform that provides courses that impart digital entrepreneurship values and knowledge to micro, rural, and youth entrepreneurs to foster income generation and increase sales at the broader national level. The Malaysian SME Master Plan 2012-2020 endorsed 8 measures to further boost SMEs' GDP annual growth, and they are namely intensify digitalization of SMEs, enhance SMEs integration in the supply chain, increase support to more SMEs with high growth through relevant incentives, increase SMEs' readiness and competitiveness in adoption of innovative, disruptive, compelling technology and business model, facilitate alternative financing for SMEs, recoup external SMEs' value chain into the country, to drive growth, strengthen uptake, and promote export of homegrown payment gateway and FinTech by SMEs, and enhance SMEs' participation in the tourism industry. Finally, premise on the National Entrepreneurship Framework, or the NEF, which is in parallel with the 8 measures for SMEs, the National Entrepreneurship Policy, the NEP, has been formulated to bring about a comprehensive, inclusive, and holistic entrepreneurship ecosystem for SMEs in the country.
So I think I have to do a legal disclaimer that I'm part of this strategy that the Malaysian government is working. Just for the ones that are more interested, and the minister could not join us today, but in actually 1 hour time, we have actually the director and the chairman of the Malaysia Digital Economic Corporation, that is precisely an entity that is leading all the digital economy sector for the Malaysian government, with which I've been working, that is going to be moderated by Ilton Super just in 1 hour time. So I want to welcome you all. It's great to have you here. It's a fantastic opportunity. And you are all reputed people in your different areas of industries. So I want to start probably with Liz. And I think we have a bit of an overview. I think the strategy of Malaysia is actually quite ambitious. They've been putting it together. And I think he highlights a lot of the things that are key for this program and for this panel. So Elise, I want to start with you because you probably have a more neutral point of view. Have been working both in strategies, but as well not being in a government, but as well being working with a lot of organizations and the big corporations. So can you tell us firstly, how do you see this moment, historical moment, especially in the crossroad between the challenge of COVID-19 and the digital transformation parts that we are all facing?
Wow, that is a great question, Dinis. And of course, thank you so much for having me here. It was great to see the opening remarks that the Minister of Malaysia did. But you're right, we are right now in a place where with COVID-19, there are a lot of challenges. And the key for me comes down to 3 things from my point of view: adaptation, collaboration, and taking faster action. The pattern with many countries seems to be a lot of talking, but never enough action. As an example, Dinis, just over a year ago, I was in Brussels in a room surrounded by policymakers, connectivity providers, vertical industries, NGOs, media, all coming together to get a better understanding of technology, how to tackle global and societal changes, and how could European countries, for example, be pioneers instead of being followers. And I heard great ideas. We had great panels and speakers, networking time to discuss real solutions. But at the end of the day, just over a year later, not much has moved forward. The digital world is 24/7, 365 days a year. It doesn't shut down, and it will not shut down over the next few decades. Adaptation is no longer a question of should I adapt? It is a question of when will I adapt? I think this is now key. And SMEs, as the minister was talking, are frustrated because their voices are not truly heard, or they are being heard but are getting lost in the background. And there isn't enough support, and they don't always know where to go for help. So I'm a big believer that local physical communities are no longer enough. This is thinking of the past because it is old school thinking. Countries need to now put a new business hat and mindset and invest in better digital infrastructures and ecosystems that are available digitally for more businesses to access. When talking about educational technology as an example, for me, Dinis, it is still hard to believe that in 2020, nearly 2021, countries are still struggling to build digital infrastructures. When we have so many digital tools available, which you also mentioned on your opening remarks, it is always little Joe or little Jill who sets up a great platform, but they cannot either get the funding or support from the governments and countries to take it to the next level. And this is where collaboration then is key. There are plenty of small and medium-sized businesses out there who are already providing solutions to the challenges of today. And if they could set up collaborations with country-led programs, then it would be a win-win for everybody. Earlier this week, I spoke to Edwin Diender from Huawei. Some of you have seen some of the video series we have done, and we have discussed this topic. Collaboration is key. Country governments should create better access and have more resources for the little guys. When the bigger companies are struggling to make partnerships happen, Dinis, how do you think the little guy feels? Countries say that they think of the little guy, but that is not always the reality. Hence, my last point on this, which is taking action. We need more open door policies that make the SMEs feel more welcome. Because there is a simple saying that says, don't just talk the talk, but walk the walk.
Yeah, very good point. And I think critical element, and I think you touched the most important thing, is that if the big organizations are struggling, and everyone is somehow affected by this, there's no one can say that is not affected. Imagine the small one. So, Mr. Sanjay Agarwal, so I know that you've been doing a lot of work, both in the theory, but as well a lot of practical work. And as well, you have both a big corporation under your management and your family, but as well, you're managing one of the biggest chambers of commerce with 140,000 companies. And I know that you've been doing a lot of practical stuff. So can you, first of all, tell us about these organizations and as well the work you've been doing, which I think relates with what Elise just mentioned.
All right. First, a brief about what I do in my business. I'm the chairman of Paramount Communications Limited. We are manufacturers of telecommunication cables like optical fiber cables and so on, and specialized cables for railways, and we do a lot of power cables also and electrical cables. So we cover quite a large gamut of cables, and our products are used all across India, and we are exporting to more than 30 countries across the world. So that having been said, I'm here wearing the hat of the president of PSD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which is a 115-year-old Chamber of Commerce and Industry established in the year 1905. We represent more than 140,000 enterprises, a bulk of which are MSMEs. Our focus is of course MSMEs, but then we do represent the interests of the complete gamut of Indian trade and industry. Our job is, first and foremost is to represent the interests of the Indian trade and industry and to do policy advocacy wherever it is needed, specifically in the government context or outside India, to talk on behalf or to act as a bridge between the foreign stakeholders and India. We have more than 150 MOUs with various international business associations through whom we correspond and try to facilitate the interaction between Indian businesses and foreign businesses. We are not only looking at policy advocacy and encouraging trade between Indian and overseas corporates, but we also consider social responsibility to be a good part of our job. So we encourage our members to spend their CSR funds actively and to even involve. We have got two foundations. One is called PSD Family Welfare Foundation, and the other is called PSD Rural Development Foundation. Through these two foundations, we do a lot of welfare work funded by our members, which include lots of skilling, lots of rebuilding of infrastructure of social structures like schools or halls for public use and all, community halls and all. And we are proud that we have built. Actually, our own team has constructed more than 300 check dams across the arid regions of Rajasthan and adjoining states, where we are able to then help in conservation of water. And the previously arid regions are now able to grow crops. So I think Overall, we try to act as a industry body with both a heart and a mind, and that's what we try to do. From our perspective, what we have seen is a sea change, a tremendous change in this post-COVID world. A lot of this change is going to be permanent. Lots of things that we took for granted will not be there anymore. Lots of things that we thought were not going to be possible to do have suddenly become possible. Uh, the Let me share the India example with you. In India, we had a very strict lockdown. Certainly, it was announced without practically any notice on 23rd of March this year. There was a complete lockdown in which it was more or less like a curfew across the country. Now, there are always debates going to happen whether it was strictly needed or not, but I think India has, if you see the results, I think we have had a much lower level of fatalities and infections than what one would have feared in a country of our size. So, be that as it may, but we had a sudden lockdown with people not able to move, industries shut, offices shut, everything shut, but still the infrastructure of the country still needed to move. You still needed to move food, you still needed to move medicines, you still needed to move hundreds and thousands of things. But there was a lockdown. So again, this is the big change that happened, that industrial associations, chambers like us, we took the lead. Within 5 days, we were up and running with the first industry interaction with the government authorities on the national level, on the state level, even at the city level, with the municipal authorities. We arranged interactions between the stakeholders, between the industry people, and even common people who wanted to join in. It was not very easy, of course, to disseminate information among non-members, but even that, we were not barring anybody to join our webinars and programs. And let me tell you, so many issues had come up because it is something like a bolt out of the blue. Certainly, it was a very strict lockdown and without any warning. So people were totally unprepared. And then it was both the public and the administrators, the highest level of officers also sometimes didn't know what to do. But then when there was a dialogue, hundreds of things got sorted out in minutes. There was no government files moving from one desk to the other. It was the deciding person sitting and listening to the people and issuing orders straight away. So many things got sorted out that lots of those things that had got bogged down, but we were able to get them opened up. The arteries of the country got opened up within 1 to 2 weeks. There was a huge issue on transportation of goods because people were afraid that COVID might be transmitted by trucks carrying goods and by their drivers from one region to the other. Now, all those things were sorted out on these digital platforms. So, earlier, one used to, think of a meeting as being only a physical meeting. Very rarely one would think of a virtual meeting. Now, the mindset that has changed, let us say tomorrow there is a complete openness about meeting again. People start interacting and going out. I think the virtual meetings, these webinars, which were sort of a novelty till a few months, till 2019, are going to be the staple. People are going to every time ask, there is a program, whether it is virtual or physical, or even it's a mix. Now, these are some huge changes. The way our Indian experience goes, we are, I think, very strong force in terms of information technology, in terms of data processing, in terms of the digital manpower that we have. And I am very sure that our entrepreneurs on the electronics, telecommunication and digital field are going all out to address the issues that come up, both as commercial people, both as entrepreneurs and as problem solvers in both ways. I think from that point of view, we are very luckily placed. We have a very strong infrastructure in terms of our human resources, which is there to work on this. But yes, there are certain trades and industries which are going to be suffering for very long, whether it is hospitality, for example, whether it's restaurants, travel, all these businesses which require people-to-people contact are going to suffer for a long time. So therefore, it's not that those businesses just need to be rescued. Maybe there have to be a development of alternative businesses, alternative lines of occupations that people need to be involved in. So there is a, let's say that X number of people lose their jobs on a net basis in the travel and hospitality business, then those same X probably would need to be gainfully employed in something else. And for that, I'm very sure that there are enough opportunities in today's world and the way we are moving. I think the way we are able to disseminate information across the world. Today, this is a webinar we are having in which again there are people from many continents. And let me tell you, even a routine chamber meetings nowadays, it has become very regular to have foreign delegates and people from across the country. Now we are not a small country; we are a continent by ourselves. Even here, we can have people attending from all length and breadth of the country, and then we have so many international delegates. So this is something which was not possible earlier. So the exchange of ideas, the access, and the access to information, and there has been a sea change in the mindset, because earlier you would think that okay, if you have to have a public interaction, that means 30, 40, maybe 500 people in a room, in a hall, in an auditorium. Today we are not limited by that. Today what we are having is a platform which anybody can join, anybody can talk. So it's basically the democratization of information, of digital technology, and I think of democratization of interaction also. So in theory, if you have a town hall, there are 10,000 people. How many people are able to still even raise their hand to show? You can have 10,000 people virtually also now, and probably you can have a better managed system to listen to whoever wants to participate. So my feeling is it's a huge setback. This pandemic has been one of the biggest problems that mankind has faced. Everyone thinks that my challenges are the biggest. So maybe yes, but I still feel that the 100-year back pandemic probably would not have been that globally impactful as this COVID-19. The way it has traveled all across the world, it touched practically everybody's lives. But at the same time, the lessons that we are learning out of it, the changes that are happening, even in a bureaucracy, let me tell you, in India, for example, those same bureaucrats who would work over paper files for months, nowadays they have become accustomed to taking decisions on the net, on the digital platforms. Now we are having most of the government offices even move their files digitally. So all these things are going to be changes which are going to remain with us. A lot of bureaucratic red tape that used to exist simply because there was no alternative, that has been blown away totally. And people say that no, now if there is a decision to be taken, please decide it and we'll see what are the loopholes later. So I think if you look at all these aspects, the technologies that we are working with as a human race, the digital transformation, artificial intelligence, blockchain, all these things, even FinTech, the sort of revolution again that is bringing in terms of again democratization of distribution of capital, in terms of the access to debt capital that but smaller borrowers are having through FinTech companies. All these technologies, as they are developing, I think their process of their development has been given a huge push or urgency because of this pandemic. So let us just be thankful to human ingenuity that the worst of our setbacks is going to again provide us one more platform to probably jump to higher levels, hopefully.
No, and very good points. And I think you mentioned a lot of different things. And I think in one end, I've been seeing a huge disruption, but as well, a lot of psychological, financial, and economic all together. And this is actually very, very sensitive. So Muhammad Amar, you are even in a more sensitive area. So you are working in very advanced technology, artificial intelligence, even ways of looking at data, biometrics, and things like that. So this is actually, so in one end, we have all this disruption, but that is going to be even much bigger disruption, and most of us probably, well, not. I think all of us in our panel, we are prepared. The rest,
you're absolutely right. The disruption that is going to be caused by the total universalization of these so-called exotic technologies, which were exotic technologies earlier, as they are getting universalized, there's going to be a huge amount of disruption in the way we do and think of things happening. But I think this is the great thing about human race. There's only one way to go, and that is to do better and to go up. So that's what
yes.
that's what we hope that we'll keep doing. Till we at least one hopes that we'll be able to avoid that ultimate button of destruction, which we are all afraid of.
No, I'm completely with you. So, Mohammad, do you want to talk a bit about the work you've been doing with artificial intelligence, telecoms, and as well cloud computing, but as well with biometrics and things related? Because you're working with some governments, and I know that you have a huge knowledge about this, and I know that area is even more probably science fiction, but it's reality right now. So, I would like to hear from you.
Absolutely. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak.
It's good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to thank you for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this knowledgeable panel. You're absolutely right. I think this is the time to stay optimistic, and like Mr. Sanjay was alluding to, with every problem there's an opportunity, and every country is facing diverse types of challenges, unique or at times very common as well. But at the end of the day, I think this presents a big opportunity as well for technology. For example, talk about Pakistan, where I am in right now. It's a huge country, over 215 million people, very young population. Median age is only 22 years. And the problem is there's a huge digital divide. Less than 20% of the people have access to internet. And with the COVID-19 hitting us hard, that has been a moment of epiphany for many of us. Schools going online, and then we realized that more than 80% of the children do not have access to internet. So what do we do? So all of these things now have actually cornered us to think out of the box and really present solutions, especially startups and technology companies, to help solve these problems. Like you mentioned, my company. We are actively engaged in a couple of such projects with the government. One of them is a step towards digital transformation, which is essentially moving the entire country from traditional biometrics, where you put your finger on a reader, to a more contactless, which is spatial biometrics using artificial intelligence. Now, this will be a great step towards digital transformation across all sectors, because think about a citizen of Pakistan, he or she would not need to go to a service center for a telco to issue a SIM, or to go to a branch bank to open a bank account. All that can be done sitting at the comfort of your home, and it's absolutely contactless. And then you document all those transactions as well, which actually helps you build the national register. Now, just want to mention something regarding the government initiatives. Like I mentioned, every government is facing unique challenges, but the government of Pakistan has been very supportive. Whichever door I knock as an entrepreneur, I'm a small startup in Pakistan, a couple of other companies that I am advising to. We welcomed quite warmly. The other area that we're working, of course, is we've built an e-commerce platform ground up in Pakistan. Again, making or forcing startups or small, medium enterprises think out of the box. So if I'm running a shop, let's say in Pakistan or any part of the world, I'm worried about the lockdown. If lockdown happens, what will happen to my business? There will be no footfall, there will be no sales, there will be no business. So now these SMEs are turning to the platforms similar to the one that we have developed, whereby they can actually digitize themselves overnight. I mean, all they need to do is, let's say, just take a photo of their inventory, put that up on our platform, and next day they can start selling online. So again, an example of how technology is helping people and businesses, be more innovative and keep the bread and butter and the cogs moving of their business.
Yeah, so Elise, I want to thank you so much, Mohammad. So Elise, you like you mentioned, you've been working with the likes of European Union and as well looking at a lot of both policies and strategies, but as well with big corporations like you mentioned why, but you've been working with some of the biggest in the world, Fortune 500. So from your work as you are your own authority, you are a super powerhouse in terms of influencing technology. You have over 200,000 followers and a lot of different things. But what is interesting, just in some channels, probably 500,000 or more that you reach. But what I want to ask, as an expert in technology, I think we see things happening, and sometimes we see people not taking action. So, like you mentioned, the European Union, a lot of things, but then practical. Is how do you see we can actually act? Because the challenge right now is that the tools are here, and like even Sanjay mentioned very well, everyone, even people that are bureaucrats, are right now using the tools. But the point is that this needs to go deeper, because let's say, and I want to be a bit provocative for all the panel, is that if you look, a couple of companies right now have more capacity, more funding, and more data than entire governments. Okay, and I'm talking a government as big as India. There is nothing bigger than India in terms of both capacity. So a couple of companies actually managed by Indians have more capacity than actually an entire government. So there's a paradox between these corporations and the governments and the knowledge, because the knowledge is key. But and of course we have all the billions of people that are struggling with this. So I would like to hear your opinion. I know that is a bit provocative, but it's on the sense of constructive.
No, it's actually a great question, and I do want to maybe follow up on something that Mohammad has said, because over the last few years, digital transformation, whether companies have taken action or not, it has already moved to the top of the agenda of many organizations. This is a topic we cannot escape. We know this, the world has gone digital, but I always look at it, Dinis, from a mindset point of view. So hence, as the independent party here, I want to make it a little bit different and give people something to think about, because one of the biggest challenges I see is that very often businesses are too slow to change. Mohammad mentioned you have now SMEs, you have businesses that are questioning, we may not have money, or what does COVID mean for my business? Can I really do something in digital? Because we're in a forever evolving digital world, and sometimes there are no budgets set aside for the evolution to happen. We must always remember, there is a sentence that I love to say, which is, it's not the most intelligent or strongest that survives, but the one that is most adaptable to change. But for that, we as individuals, as the leaders, or as the advisors, we must be adaptable. Hence, this being one of the biggest questions or challenges. And let me tell you why. Because many of the transformations require businesses to take on, let's call it, a bit of a risk. And a large part of traditional companies are being led by old school mindsets who are too afraid to take on that risk, hence the slow process. We're seeing this with COVID-19. One of the things that we have truly learned during this time is that connectivity, social, and digital have played an even more crucial role than ever to keep us going. But what do we see, Dinis? Many decision makers that are still at a standstill. They still don't want to take that leap forward. They want to wait for next year or even the year after. And then we also have to consider, I think companies or SMEs consider the employee pushback within this challenge. And that means that a business also needs the support of their main team to adapt, change, and implement. And when the leadership is unsure, then that mindset trickles down the chain. Employees feel threatened by the potential changes, and then that turns and affects the productivity of the companies. So then these put more doubts in the decision makers, because they do not have the right people to implement the necessary strategies for their digital growth, and most importantly, the transformation, which then takes it right back to they need to take a bit of a risk. but they're not prepared to do that yet. And then it makes it a little bit of a hamster wheel. A huge part of digital transformation, as we know, is change. And when up to 74% of businesses believe that adaptation can negatively affect their ability to change course, then we do have a big challenge in our hands. Because regardless of the amount of positive data that we have, everything that is available on the market, with supplies and studies on how digital transformation can take a business further, the fear of not knowing sometimes overpowers logic. The fear of losing customers, as an example, because you might change the customer experience of buyers. So the inability to fully trust emerging technologies, I'm still a big believer that is a huge challenge. Let's think about Kodak. Kodak invented the digital camera, but sat on it for years because it feared the end of film. So it comes down once again to the fear of not knowing and not willing to take a risk soon enough.
Yeah, and I think this is the most important thing, our management of risk, but as well management, innovation, and education. Mr. Sanjay, so you are in a very interesting and probably sensitive position, because in one end you're managing a multi-million and very giant corporation, and in the other end you are leading the Chamber of Commerce, one of the biggest chambers of commerce of India, where we have a huge amount of companies. So you are facing the challenge of being in a big corporation and at the same time dealing with medium and small companies, and seeing the struggle between all these different dualities and challenges. So how do you see this? And as well, like you mentioned as well, you have to see that India has been leapfrogging decades in the space of years, because we have to see as well that we have a lot of velocities in the world. We have, but at the moment, I think every country right now is having the same challenge, because the United States sometimes in some areas is actually less developed than India is. If you go to New Delhi, India right now is. So I would like to hear these details. How do you see this?
Let me first share that even my company, we are bigger. We are among the bigger enterprises today, but we have our roots in the MSME sector. My own company was started by my father as a very small micro enterprise way back in 1955. My father himself was always, heading up business chambers and associations and helping the small-scale entrepreneurs, MSME entrepreneurs. And even during my own career, we transformed into a non-MSME or a medium-level company somewhere around in mid-95. So we have been all through, and most of our stakeholders, our vendors, lots of our customers are MSMEs. So it's all one single ecosystem, in which, yes, one has to understand that MSMEs, in terms of numbers, are the preponderant lot. They are more than 95%, 97% maybe of the actual number of enterprises. We have 40 million plus MSMEs in India. So this is the beating heart of Indian trade and industry. So that has to be looked at. So we all have to be looking at the interests of MSME. So that's not a challenge. On the other hand, what I must say is that it is being the president of this chamber is by itself a huge learning process for me. The amount of interaction that I am having to have with our constituents as the president far exceeds my active involvement in the PSD chamber for the last more than 10-15 years. So the sort of exposure that I am getting to the issues at hand, even in terms of management styles, in terms of thinking, in terms of forward-looking policies that various colleagues have. When we discuss things, when we interact with so many people, I think for me personally also it's a huge learning process. And I think on completion of my term, I believe that I'll feel personally quite enriched, because with this level of exposure, when one is talking about such a large number of constituents, such a large number of stakeholders, one learns even better to talk about the overall interest and to look for the overall good where it can be possible, rather than to be just looking at your small segment. So that I think is a great gain. Coming back to the Indian economy having got some advantages. I think this advantage is not there just with India, but in fact across most of the third world. Telecom is a very typical example. We used to struggle with the 1% telecom penetration, 1.5% telecom penetration, till just about 30 years back. I remember that when I joined business, and we were even then in telephone cables, we used to be very disappointed that the tele density in India is 1.5. So 1.5 means 1.5 persons per 100 having a telephone. Now, once this transformation happened to digital, we were lucky enough, being third world countries, not to have the legacy of the old dowdy, slow-moving digital mobile systems, or rather analog mobile systems, and we straight away practically ended up 2 or 3 generations ahead. So that was an advantage because we earlier could not have afforded it, right? So in terms of the way technology has changed, the way technology is changing in the past 30, 40 years, as per Moore's law, the speed of technical improvement is such that people who invest later tend to invest smaller amounts but get better product, which is true in case this turning the earlier thinking on its head totally. So I think that advantage one gets, and this advantage is then to be utilized in the most effective manner by all nations. And I think India is doing its own part. Our neighbors, Pakistan, are doing their own part. I think countries across the world are doing their own part. And this is, again, as I said, because of the technology, this is democratization or, universal availability of opportunities to actually do new things and to learn with new technology. So I think that is something which is a very positive trend to be welcomed.
Completely, and I think it's a big thing because I think the legacy systems in the Western world and then the immersion technologies that are happening give a lot of opportunities, but as well it brings us as well a new crossroads. So Mohammad, you've been working.
I can tell you, I'll give you a small example.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I owned a company in the UK, and that company had a ERP system which must have cost a bomb to the earlier owners, and it was practically a dinosaur when I wanted to use it. But to change that system, it would have cost so much that I had no choice but to continue with that old ERP, because just to change, it was going to be practically make the whole thing uneconomic. So I think this is an advantage in many cases of starting on a fresh slate, and this is what so many of the third world economies will use as an advantage across the world.
No, completely. And I think it's a great opportunity because the costs as well of digital have been dropping massive. Like you mentioned, let's say just a couple of years ago, you have to spend millions and millions of dollars. Now you spend small amount. The point is more the change management that Elise mentioned. So Mohammad, you've been working in artificial intelligence, which is the most frontier technology, the exotic that Sanjay mentioned as well. So in terms of the work you've been doing in artificial intelligence, and as well with the governments, but as well you work with the likes of Vodafone and Nokia before. So can you tell us a bit, how do you see the AI, and as well you mentioned biometrics, which is a very important thing because this data is going to be changing everything, because in the end of the day, who owns this data owns the world economy. And at the moment, most of this data is owned by big corporations in Silicon Valley and some in China. So how do you see this? First of all, the AI applied to governments and to business, which is something that in some ways is a lot of science fiction, but our phones, even this streaming platform is using some of these things. But looking at these details and how we can actually use this to empower people and accelerate innovation and as well business empowerment.
Absolutely, Dinis. So AI, I mean, it's been used as a buzzword for many years now, and but my view on AI is that it has to be in service. AI without a use case or without solving a problem is nothing. It's just a buzzword. I mean, it has entered every walk of life. I mean, you talk about healthcare, you talk about automotive, you talk about pharmaceutical industry, telecom, everywhere, whether to different scale, AI is being used. particularly in in our use cases. We are using a branch of AI which is very specialized, and what it does is it detects a human face in a very interesting manner. It detects for liveliness and matches to one to many, and really qualifies that into a use case. Similarly, telcos use that for predicting churn, for example. I mean, telcos don't want their customers to be going to other operators. So how can you use AI to predict whether somebody is going to churn or not? But again, I mean, this is the core of technology, but there are a lot of peripheries as well. Like you rightly mentioned, the data is the new oil and gold. But the problem with data is that it's just sitting out there and nobody is using it because either it's unstructured. Sorry if I'm getting a bit technical, but or it's not being coordinated into a more usable ecosystem. So the first and the foremost thing that enterprises need to do is to look at their data and start cleansing them. Maybe hire one or two data annotators, stewards, and start cleansing your data. And the whole idea of putting AI on top of that data comes later. So I think we are still in that evolutionary phase of artificial intelligence. There are some credible use cases out there, but generally speaking, there's a lot of work that needs to be done right at the data level. The sooner we do it, the better we are able to make use of AI. And another thing, what the governments need to do is start thinking about their national policy around AI and data governance as well. Giving an example of Pakistan, we are not very crisp around our data governance policy. We're not sure whether, at times we talk about data sovereignty. For example, data sovereignty is data should not leave the boundaries of Pakistan, the country. But at times we're flexible. So, that needs to be very clear, especially from, startup ecosystem perspective and also from foreign investment perspective, that, a country should give clear message to the international community about what their data strategy is.
Now, Kopurin, I think this is very important because the data is actually not used by countries, but has been used by big corporations. So that's a big differentiator that we all need to look. So, Elise, you've been working with big corporations, but you have big data yourself because you have thousands and sometimes millions of followers, and you have been both from Twitter to Instagram to Facebook and a lot of different channels, or LinkedIn, where you are really a superstar. So how do you see these different parts of, first of all, managing your audience, but then seeing a lot of business and governments and big organizations like the EU struggling? Because in the end of the day, everyone is partly struggling with digital, but as well, everyone knows that has to go there, but is not still taking it. And for instance, I just want one example. So for instance, I've been working with a lot of professors of business analytics in leading universities. And for instance, during the COVID-19, if the governments have access to real-time data, and if they know, for instance, that, let's say, you mentioned, for instance, Sanjay, that is 40 million companies in India. If you know that, for instance, 90% of these companies are struggling, we can inject money in the ones that are viable and eventually just help the other ones being acquired by others. So there's a lot of ways, but this implies as well a lot of protectionism and a lot of challenge in the legislation, policy making, and control. So how do you see that, Elise? And then I want to go to Sanjay as well, because this is particularly challenging, because for instance, China is going faster because they are doing all of that very fast, but the rest of the world is not. So they leapfrog 10 years above the rest of the world. So how do you see that, Elise? Because you've been working as well with a lot of corporations, both in Asia and Europe and the US.
I'm going to try to keep it short because I can also see we're coming up to the hour and we could go on for the rest of the day.
We have a bit, 5 minutes more. We have a break afterwards. So I would like to give you more space, all of you. Yeah.
I think something we haven't really focused on today, I want to bring it down to trust, collaboration, synergies, exploring all of these. Dinis requires trust. Without trust, any policy is going to fail, no matter the political program in any country. And something that I've seen is that during COVID-19, as an example, there has been a greater divide between the country leaders and the citizens. During the main lockdowns, as an example, I was personally traveling between 2 European countries. And even I lost a bit of trust in the system, because what I was hearing on the media, what we were being told, didn't actually match my personal experience as I went back and thought and forth. So how can we build the synergies between the businesses and the country institutions? How do we put trust in all these platforms that are giving us fake news? When the citizens have lost a lot of trust over the last few months, and not only that, but we have the challenge that some governments, not all, are creating fear about how technology is going to destroy jobs. Today we're talking about AI, we've got here Mr. Sanjay Mohammed, we heard from the Minister of Malaysia, how there are positive policies being put into place, but trust is a belief of someone or something being reliable. It means that we have confidence and feel safe. But when we don't have that, how can we get the right relationship built to move on with digital transformation? And this is something that I come across when I go into companies or when I talk to individuals, which is I have a fear of trust. I am not sure. Actually, this reminds me, Dinis, last year we were in London at an event, and I did this little exercise where I asked people to close their eyes, because when we close our eyes, all of a sudden there is this fear of, I don't know what's out there. And for me, digital is an equivalent of that. If I'm blind and somebody taps me in the shoulder, I jump. I cry out because I'm scared of what's to come. When we have governments, when we have digital platforms, and call it experts or gurus that tell you you must do X, Y, and Z, but you don't know the reason, then there is a fear of actually taking action, which brings all together to what I said earlier. Misunderstandings, incomplete or unintelligible information can create sustainable difficulties. And the biggest challenge I see is that we don't yet have a standard roadmap for adoption of these platforms and all of these different emerging technologies under digital transformation, which include 5G, AI, and everything else that encompasses that businesses can follow. So my belief is that we do need a reset, a new planning with a fresh, open mindset that is willing to change, to continue taking action. The first step for me would be to always put aside any preconceived feelings we may have about technology and just say first yes to digital transformation. Then it is extremely important to have our voices heard. Businesses do need to share their concerns, what their needs are for a country to provide help. How can the ministers or the leaders of companies provide something? There is a supply for a demand always, but a demand has to be created first. And as 2021 looms in, I believe that, to be honest, we also have to be realistic. And this has been touched very briefly. But remember, money is key. Budgets are important. Without a budget set aside for digital transformation strategy and implementation, that is the key, implementation, not just to talk about it as we sit down in European government offices or forums or events. If you do not set aside a budget to implement what you're talking about, nothing is ever going to happen. And the common answer on this topic is always not enough money in the budget, because digital transformation and all these digital platforms, although they are here, it is not as yet common practice to set an equally important budget for it. It's a little bit like cybersecurity. In the past, companies did not want to hire experts to check for desktop vulnerabilities or to set up safer infrastructures, because nothing had ever happened to them. They didn't have a breach, so they never saw it as a must or a necessity. Prevention was never on the top of the deck. After worldwide known security breaches and hacks have happened, let's talk Facebook or the Hollywood industry or many digital platforms, including money such as credit cards. MasterCard had a breach not long ago, and to be honest, not many people know about it because they keep it hush. So now, after all of this is still not normal to be part of a budget. Digital transformation still needs to go through this process. It needs to become part of our normal thinking accepted and implemented in the right way. And as my final remark, I would like to say that I believe personally that what we have here today and tomorrow at this summit, but right now we're on the kickoff, and the people watching are not just people who talk the talk, but people who want and are already walking the walk in the same way, or are ready to start, and this is why they're listening. So we together can all be game changers in this race. If we work together toward a common cause, this is definitely not an individual race to see who is the best company providing AI solutions, or who is the best government or the best country. This is about countries working together, finding companies where you can find synergies, because not one person has the knowledge for all. Otherwise, Dinis will be doing this whole summit on his own, but he doesn't. He brings experts together from different areas so that we can share some thoughts. Because just like some people might agree with me, some people will hate what I say. And it will happen with Mohammed, with Mr. Sanjay, and with every single speaker that comes here over the next 2 days. As I said earlier, digital transformation is about adaptation. And adaptation is no longer the question, should I adapt? The question is, when will I adapt? As the famous saying goes, if not us, then who? If not now, then when?
Completely. So, Mr. Sanjay, so how do you put this in practice? Because you have a huge capacity and a huge reach, and it's key as well, because in the end of the day, I think your organization, an organization like yours, can do more than governments, because you are as well dealing with the business people, with their difficulties, with their challenges, and the ecosystem, because the ecosystem together can create a lot of value, can help each other, can learn, and so forth.
I would, I really thank you for your compliment, but actually, business chambers do not carry that sort of a power. But of course, we have a role. We have a very important role in working, in striving to work for the businesses, for the trade, for the industry, and it is. I think it is something that, again, I feel that we feel as a chamber. Now, I'm not talking about as economy or anything. As a chamber, I think we have a better opportunity now to make an impact, in the sense that earlier, on our events, whenever we used to, try to disseminate any information, whether we have any program on any laws, any technology or any policies, that would entail some physical presence of 20, 30, 50, 100, 500 people in a single spot. Now, that limitation is gone forever. So today, we are not limited by location or geography of participants. That gives us a much better opportunity to have people attend what is going to be useful for them from a business point of view, to attend in terms of learning opportunity, to attend in terms of not just learning, but in terms of being able to put across their point and their difficulties, and then to attend in terms of being able to see who all they can do business with. So all these opportunities, the virtual platforms that as a chamber, we are very happy to provide to our members, and which are developing on a day-to-day basis. We are doing virtual exhibitions across the world. The same events, the same physical, delegations that used to go earlier to various countries across the world. We typically would have some 20, 30 delegations going to various countries, where the small entrepreneurs would be physically selling their wares also, in addition to making customers for the future. Now, all those things having been transformed into a virtual platform, in many ways, our reach becomes bigger, because many more people can join, many more people can get the exposure. So I think in that way, our responsibility has increased. We can do a lot more to work for the constituency that we have. And I think this is one thing that I have a feeling that, yes, we have done pretty well by during the last 6 months. For example, you'll be surprised to know a number that our chamber held something like 100 events in the first 6 months of our, Okay, presidential year as we call it. So October to March, we had something like 9,500 events. And once COVID lockdown happened, April to September this year, we had 300 events. Can you imagine? 3 times the number of events happened. And each of these virtual events was having a much larger participation of our members than those physical events in which, sometimes one would get only 10, 20, 25 people to attend a program, right? So this larger reach, larger outreach that we have within the trade and industry, I think that gives us an opportunity to do much more. So Dinis, I do endorse your point on this, that yes, now in this situation, we do have a lot more to do.
No, and it's already a positive thing that we need to, I think everyone needs to use that opportunity to empower and create more dynamics, like Elise said. So last remotes, and I think we passed 1 hour, but there's still a couple minutes more. So Mohammad, so you've been touching the most sensitive area, okay? Because definitely AI is going to be much more radical. It's going to change everything. Biometrics. So this data is right now in the hands of corporations and institutions. But as AI starts touching the data, we can get insights, we can get prediction, we can actually understand. For instance, Mr. Sanjay can actually look at the 140 companies, understand these companies can grow, they can go, we can help them on this, we can get them a course on that. So how do you see this practicality of the cutting edge technologies that we have and that we started to use?
Could I just add one question?
Yeah, go ahead. I think we still have a bit of time. Yeah, go ahead.
Umar, you mentioned that cleaning up of the data is very important to be able to use artificial intelligence. Don't you think artificial intelligence, if you could use in some manner to clean up in the first place also, because that is something also an artificial intelligence program could probably do better than the humans? Do you think that's a viable proposition?
No, I think completely. I think that's the way we need to do it. But I'll pass to you, Mohammad, because I think I will hear. You can answer to Sanjay. I think that's the idea as well of the panel.
Yeah, absolutely. So in a way, Mr. Sanjay is correct. I mean, but this is futuristic. I think we're still in embryonic phase of artificial intelligence. So machine learning relies on data. I mean, if you want reliable predictions or outcomes out of artificial intelligence, then the underlying data has to be very crisp. But of course, I mean, there's another aspect of machine learning, which is deep learning, which is more unsupervised, which means that computers are able to take decisions on their own without any external intervention. Now, to get to that point, I mean, there's a maturity model, and it will take us some time. But you're right, Mr. Sanjay, absolutely. I mean, this is what the future looks like. I'm personally fascinated with what's happening in the healthcare domain. I mean, there's a company that I advise to, and we're using artificial intelligence to determine the likelihood of somebody getting cancer just by looking at the histopathology trend. And similarly, we're helping some of the companies in Pakistan to measure or to analyze the brain cells in case of any tumors that could lead to any diverse disorders. So it's really I think a very broad subject. But what we need to do is, I mean, again, I just want to use the forum and get this message across, is the grassroots development. I mean, AI is not something that nations will learn overnight. So we have to have some kind of grassroots development initiatives in place, which means that children from a very early age should be exposed to the basic concepts of AI. It should be introduced as part of the curriculum. A lot of countries are doing it. I mean, they're encouraging children to code on Python, which is very instrumental in AI, and then really sort of build our foundations at an educational level. SMEs have to use AI in a different way, and of course the governments in a different way. But we all agree that this is what the future is. Either we accept it, or whether we accept it or not, the industrial revolution is just around the corner, the fourth industrial revolution. There's no need to be insecure. I mean, a lot of theories that people will lose their jobs and all that. But I personally feel that this will create new roles. It's just that we have to be prepared right from the grassroots level and helping our next generation be ready for it.
Yeah, and I think it's a good way to wrap up. So I want to thank you all. It's been fantastic as well. You can see as well. So we're going to have in the next panel talking about it, although we didn't have the minister, I think he highlighted a lot of these things. And I think it's interesting to see that Malaysia is actually trying to put this on the grassroots that you mentioned level. But I think I want to thank you, Elise, Sanjay, and Muhammad. It's been an honor to have you all here. There's a lot of great things as well. I want to thank you for all. We had around 1,000 people during the duration of the panel, so it's not quite so bad. And they've been actually at least 200 went until the end. So good. So I want to thank you. I think probably what I think my last word is making sure that we have actually this energy to take it to our organizations, and as well making sure that this happens, because as well, if we don't do it, trust me, we're going to have a dystopic future, and I want to make sure that our children can get something better than the possibilities that we have. So thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hi everyone, thank you everyone for joining our previous panel. And the next panel coming up in 15 minutes is 4AR Society 5.0, Digital Twins and EdTech. What are the key steps for smart governments and businesses? The panel will be moderated by Hilton Supra, who is the Vice Chairman and President of ztudium and Cities ABC. And he will be joined by Dr. Rais Hussein, the Chairman of Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, Dr. Ricardo Greenfield, who is the branch manager of Euro Alliance, Managing Director of Euro Alliance PT, and Jay Jan, who is the head of Start Me Up, Invest Hong Kong, Department of Hong Kong SAR Government. And meanwhile, I would like to show you one of our films about issues of Society 5.0 and the smart cities. Thank you everyone for staying with us. I wanted to let you know that the Open Business Council Summit is organized by openbusinesscouncil.org, a leading global digital business directory certification and marketplace created by Ztudium Group in partnership with Intelligent HQ, hedgethink.com, tradersdna.com, powered by Ztudium Group with techabc.com. With businesses and startups facing uncertain time in a recession, drop in sales, limited funding, and the challenges that came with COVID, we organized Open Business Council Summit to address today's most recent issues and to see how the technologies and governments can join the forces together and ensure the better development for the society and the digital transformation solutions being used for the best needs of humanity. Our summit has solid focus on government and digital strategies, covering all aspects of technologies and modern tools like blockchain, AI, FinTech, IoT, and over 2 days we would have various sessions concerning each of those topics. Next session, that is coming up in 5 minutes, would cover mostly the 4AR, Society 5.0, and EdTech. It would discuss the key steps for the how the government can act smart and how can businesses can enhance their efficiency and make sure that everything that is made nowadays, despite all the challenges that we are having, that it is made for the best of humanity and that we are empowered by technologies and not being the problem. We would have a 5-minute pause to switch to our session. Please bear with us with the next stream on Dinis Guarda YouTube channel, on Open Business Council Periscope. We also the summit has also is also been done with the summit has also been done with in partnership with C# community and Startup Bangladesh. We see you in 5 minutes in our new link for the panel with Hilton Supra.